Welcome, Paul Brody, to the Wholesome Crypto Podcast Show. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I saw some of your other recordings. I'm in really good company here. Like I'm a little flattered
Thank
to
you.
be invited.
Of course, I mean, you've done so much in the crypto space. You're currently a global blockchain leader in one of the biggest companies, Ernst Young, and you have a huge, awesome technical history behind you. But before we get into all the technical stuff and your crypto work and your blockchain work, where were you in life before even hearing about Bitcoin?
Where was I? I was at IBM.
Hmm.
I was a vice president at IBM, and I had spent I got my start. So I have a very bizarre career history. So
Love it.
as an undergrad, I took a class on African history, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting.
Hmm.
So then I took another and another and another. And after like five of these classes, I was like, you know what? I need to visit some part of Africa. I've been studying this continent, which is so different from everywhere I've grown up, everywhere I've been. And so I got a job. I got a summer job. And I've always been a bit of a nerd, but I
Hmm.
got a summer job working at the first mobile phone company in Nigeria.
Wow. What
And
what year was that,
I was
if you remember?
1994. It was an analog e-tax network that we built,
Hmm.
and it was awesome. Like I had an incredible time during the summer, so much so that at the end of the summer, uh, the guy who had hired me, he's like, Paul, would you take a year off? Like, take a year off. I'll make you the head of marketing for the entire company.
Wow.
Right? I'm
Sweet
like,
deal.
I'm not even graduated from college, right? And he's like, I'll make you head of marketing for the entire company, right? You'll be the acting head. You know, you'll get to spend this time here, and you can travel all around the region. You know, we'll make sure you have plenty of vacation. You know, we'll even pay you a bit of money. So I did. I took them up on this offer.
I would too.
Was well, my parents were absolutely terrified. They're
Of
like,
course.
he's not going to finish college, right? And this in those days, so I was living in Nigeria, and in the United States, at every airport there was a little sign that said the I think it was the FAA, the Department of Transportation, advises passengers that Murtala Muhammad International Airport in Lagos, Nigeria, does not maintain adequate safety procedures.
That's great to
And
show.
you know,
Yeah.
every time my parents got on a plane, they're like, "Oh, our son is over there." And but I was fine. I had a great time. It was really great. Nigerians are incredibly entrepreneurial people. Like the country has terrible infrastructure. It's got really struggling at the time through the rule of law, and these people are putting together incredible businesses. They're just like the most entrepreneurial people. They always figure stuff out. So for me, it was this kind of incredible experience of like getting to see an entirely new technology
Hmm.
kind of be deployed, and really seeing the leapfrogging going. I mean, you know, Nigeria was a country of 100 million people at the time, and they had like half a million landlines, and honestly, like
Wow.
almost none of them worked, right? And here we are, we're selling the first cell phones, and now cell phones in Africa are super cheap. But in those days, we sold the phones for $1,000 each. Airtime was $1 a minute, payable in US dollars, by the way. And people used to come in to the office with like bundles of cash to pay their bills.
Wow.
It was amazing. There was an election while I was there, and then the military dictator at the time, this guy, his name is eluding me. He didn't like the outcome, so he kind of canceled the results, and then it was a military coup, and we had martial law. Very entertaining, not a dull moment.
Yeah.
And I got to see all over Africa, and then I came back to the U.S. I finished college, and like that made me the most interesting job applicant. Everyone's like, "Who is this guy?
Y- yeah.
Like, we want to meet him."
You're.
Right? I didn't anywhere I sent the resume, I got an interview. I didn't get a lot of job offers. I feel like I wallpapered my college dorm room with rejection letters.
They just want to hear
Um,
your story, though.
they want to hear the story. Eventually, I wanted to be an investment banker. Investment banking did not want me.
Hmm.
Um, but eventually, I ended up in consulting, which was great because I was sort of scared of this idea of being bored. And I did a little bit of consulting, and then you know I've always loved technology, and I went into the startup track. I did 2 years at supply chain planning startup called I2 Technologies, and then I did 2 years at a logistics company called ClearCross, and this was like during the dot com bubble. We burned through like $90 million in venture capital money, and
Uh,
in like 2 years,
wow.
um, I know we spent crazy amounts of money. Like
That's how it
it
was
was
back then.
full on dot com boom, and then we went broke, and
I mean, that's what
the
happens. Yeah.
bubble burst. Um, and I had this aha moment. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't, I'm never going to make this up. I'm not like a founder type, so I need to sort of change up my career a bit. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be a founder
Hmm.
of a tech startup. But maybe, I've got a good management consulting background. I've worked at a couple startups. I need to go ahead and learn to be adult supervision, right? And the
That's a
place that you
tough role.
learn
Hmm.
how to be adult supervision is IBM. So, and I had an offer from IBM, and I went and I joined IBM in the supply chain business, and I spent all told about 14 years now. Now, the irony
Wow.
is, after 8 years at IBM, I did become a co-founder of a startup.
Within
It
IBM.
was an No, no, I left IBM. I
Mm.
started an online movie company with a buddy of mine
Hmm.
who's no longer a buddy. We fought with each other the entire time. He fired me
Wow.
very sensibly.
It's a marriage.
The startup, I
Business.
know,
It
not
is.
a good marriage.
Hmm.
Like, we got married, we got divorced. The startup went down in flames,
Wow.
and I ended up unemployed. But it was it was a really good experience for me because it made me being unemployed for like the second time uh really changed me a lot, and it mostly changed me, and this sounds silly, but the second time around I was married, right, and my husband's got a great job, right, and I think about this all the time. I was watching this TikTok meme where a guy's like, I've got a better plan, I'll marry a wealthy man. I was like, yeah, actually, I guess I kind of did that. So, and it was incredibly liberating because um IBM came back to me and they said, Paul, we'd love you to come back. And I was like, I don't know, I want to.
Yeah.
And and they were like, well, surely there's something you want to do here because you were really good at your job. And I was like, well, I want to be in charge of the whole electronics industry. I was to be honest, a kind of a mediocre director.
Okay.
Right? I was kind of mediocre. I was mediocre at being a bit of a salesperson, but I love like the thought leadership, the strategic planning. I remember before I left IBM, I had been like the acting head of the industry for like 6 months while they filled somebody in, and I loved it. Right? And I was like, well, I want to be the vice president in charge of the industry. And about 3 months later, IBM came back and they're like, you know what? That role is now available for you. And I took the
Yeah.
job,
Made your own role.
and yeah, and it was awesome. I really really enjoyed it. And the reason why it was so great, I mean, first of all, I just for whatever reason, I turned out to be actually a much better vice president than like salesperson. I'm you could like I'm good at telling
Yeah.
stories.
That's a salesperson too. Is how well you can tell a story. The only difference now is that you don't have to also give them a quote. You can just say, "I'll talk to the sales guy. Here's the whole story."
Well, you know what? I'll tell you. So I'm actually quite a good project manager,
Hmm.
and I'm a really good kind of storyteller, visionary. I am the world's worst negotiator. Like, never. Okay. So I give my best offer immediately, right, and then I get really upset. There's all these. My husband is a lawyer. He negotiates stuff all the time, and you can't upset him. Like, you can ask for something outrageous, and he'll be like, that's not possible, but I respect you. You got to ask, right? When you ask me, you kidding me? I mean, do I look stupid? I get offended, I get angry, I get emotional, right? And it doesn't work. So I'm a terrible salesperson. I can never I'm bad at closing deals. I get upset during the negotiations. I take it personally. It doesn't work. So
But that's why you have that
so
vision,
now
that storytelling. You have that passion, emotion into it, and it's needed. It's needed to like convince people, "Hey, this is what I see. I want you to see it with me."
and I yes, and I love the work of figuring out how the world will be different.
Hmm.
It was amazing, and one of the greatest perk of being a vice president at IBM in charge of an entire industry was that I was able to I had a research and development team. And every year we picked a new problem to kind of think big about. Like could have been, for
It's
the
awesome.
electronic, could be medical devices, semiconductors. And one year we picked the Internet of Things,
Hmm.
right? All these connected devices that were coming. And we had clients that were coming to us that were saying, hey, we have a problem, right? We're gonna we're starting to produce millions of these smart connected devices, and we don't really know how to monetize the devices. We don't know how to make money with the devices, but also like these devices cost a lot to manage, right? We're
Yep.
spending like, it's weird, like these super smart devices, which are everywhere. We're still paying money in the data center to manage them. And I was like, this seems really strange. Like, aren't these incredibly smart devices able to manage themselves? Like, can't my phone back up my computer, which backs up my iPad, which
Yeah.
backs up my smartwatch? And so I convened with him and I said, we should figure out how to make these smart devices like work in a mesh, like how to, and then we could cut out uh, all the sort of data center stuff and things like that. And we should figure out how to make money from this as well. So long story short, one of the guys I worked with, he's like, have you heard of Bitcoin? So we're talking about like how to figure out how to manage these networks of smart devices. And to do that, what I ended up doing was one of my friends said, "Hey, Paul, have you heard of this thing called Bitcoin?" And I was like, "Yeah, I kind of heard of it." He's like, "Well, it's really it's like a distributed computer, right? And there's this guy, Vitalik Buterin,
Hmm.
right? And he thinks he can turn Bitcoin into like a general purpose computing system. And each smart device could have a node in this thing called Ethereum, and they could all transact with each other." And I was like, well, that sounds really cool. So we reached out and we started working with Vitalik. This was on the alpha version of Ethereum,
Wow.
and it was super interesting. And he's you know he's a very he's also a bit of a visionary. He's not a big talker, but he definitely is a visionary. And between Vitalik and we had another guy, he created a thing called Telehash that was like for instant messaging, and then we added BitTorrent to it, so we had file transfer messaging and contracts. And it was funny because at the time we sat down and were like, I don't know what anybody will want to pay for with the Internet of Things. But one day somebody will figure it out. And when they do, blockchain and especially Ethereum will be this mechanism where I can have contracts and payments and accounts. It kind of comes built in.
Yeah.
And I just thought this was awesome. Like it was transformational. We sold the vision actually to Samsung. We built something that was called ADAP, autonomous, decentralized, electronic, peer-to-peer telemetry.
Was it blockchain based or
And
it's kind of
it was based on the
okay.
alpha version of Ethereum. And we
Nice.
sold it to Samsung, and we built a prototype with Samsung of connecting like dishwashers and smartphones and
Mm.
refrigerators and everything. It was amazing. We showed it at CES. There's actually, I could dig it up for you somewhere. There's a picture of me and the IBM research team and Vitalik at CES in January 2015 showing the prototype.
Wow. Yeah, I remember like IBM going hard into blockchain too later on with Hyperledger.
Yes, but that was after I had left. At the
Mm.
time, IBM actually was really lukewarm about this. And I don't
Oh,
know the whole history of why they were lukewarm about this, but they were not excited. Like the kind of like after January, after actually long before January 2015, we showed the prototype. We basically told like, this is the final hurrah for this thing. We don't want to do any more on this. And that was kind of for me the end of the road then. I was like, you know what? I have found the thing that I want to do. And I went to EY to take a kind of a bit of a similar job, but with the understanding I could do a bit more blockchain. And within about 6 months of getting to EY, I sort of managed to convince the senior leadership there uh, that we should make blockchain kind of my full time job, and we should build a serious, proper blockchain business around that. So that's what we did.
yeah, and it's awesome because you're recognized as a global blockchain leader for Ernst and Young. That's an awesome title to have, and awesome responsibility. Eh, But how did you I guess how did you feel once you first heard about Ethereum, then you started working into, making that your passion, your goal? Like sometimes, like for me, it took a little while. Like I always felt like crypto was part of my identity for a while, but it was hard to make that leap into full time crypto. And for you, it almost came
It's
like
very
naturally.
hard. It didn't. I mean, so two things happened. So first of all, when I was at IBM, you know IBM doesn't do the research for free, right?
Hmm.
They don't do it for no purpose. Like they do it to make product, but even if they don't get product, they like to write papers about it. And so I spend a lot of time writing about it. And when you write about stuff, it forces you to really think through what are the full implications,
Yeah.
right? And we wrote a paper. It was called Device Democracy, and the idea behind this paper was, using blockchains, using Ethereum, we can create a device based kind of business ecosystem that is better and fairer and more democratic than this highly centralized digital ecosystem that we have. And a lot of these ideas that we talk a lot about now, kind of, I figured them out not before others, but for myself.
Hmm.
And I became very convinced. I became convinced about the value proposition. Sort of being forced to sit down and write a bunch of papers about this stuff makes you think, okay, how how will this change the entire world? And I came to the conclusion that it would change everything about every business relationship. It would change about how we handle all our devices. It would restructure the internet and and kind of all the business relationships that we have. And once you start thinking about that, I the one thing I am particularly good at, and I'm not a great software developer technology guy. Like
Same.
my mother was a mainframe software developer. My father was a nuclear physicist. I always tell people that makes me something of a disappointment, right? The econ major with a side in African studies. Um, but I'm good at writing. I'm good at telling the story. I convince myself, and then I convince others.
Hmm.
Now, EY is a partnership, right? So you have to. It's so funny. People in blockchain sometimes are like, "Have you heard of this thing called staking?" I'm like, "Yes, I had to take out a $500,000 loan to
Oh
join
wow.
EY."
Oh wow.
So I am staked in EY, and so are the other partners. And the thing that was scary and challenging and difficult is, you know, when you're a partner at EY and you're not pulling your own weight, right? You're investing the money and it's not generating big returns yet. And you're starting out this business, man. You feel a lot of pressure. I remember going to a partner dinner once and sitting down with a bunch of partners, and they're like, "So Paul, when are you gonna stop wasting our money on this blockchain thing?"
Uh,
And I was like, I'm sort of hoping we'll be, sort of break even or profitable in like 2020, 22 or something like that. And that was not a good answer to give in like 2015. Um,
but that's what
so
a new tech is. I think that's why all these large companies are so lukewarm about it. Is because we have to wait
it's risky.
10 years and it's risky for a return. Like I don't. Who wants to do that as a company that has to give quarterly earnings?
Right. And we are so fortunate. When I left IBM, I swore that I would never join another publicly traded company. Like EY is a partnership. We don't have to do anything silly at the end of the quarter. I
Mm,
mean, obviously, if we screw it up, that's my paycheck.
yeah.
Right? That's my paycheck, that's my peer's paycheck, but we don't have to. There's no industry analyst I have to please, right? There's no at the end of each quarter, you know, we don't really worry much about the end of the quarter. We worry about the year as a whole, right? But there were a lot of skeptics. There were a ton of skeptics. The business was tiny. I mean, I can remember. It's so funny. Like we don't disclose the details yet, but I can tell you last year, uh, you can do the math, right? But last year we disclosed that we've exceeded $100 million annual run rate,
Wow.
right? And our compound annual growth rate is well above 100%. So it's like a real business now. But divide everything in half like six times. I can remember the first $50,000 deal. I can remember the first $100,000 deal, the first $1 million deal. I thought, oh my God, this is amazing and scary. What are we going to do? And and then EY, we're an accounting and professional services firm, and I'm like, I want to hire a bunch of nuclear physicists and mathematicians so that we can work on blockchain privacy and then give it away. And everyone's like, you're insane. Like, it's I figured out it's very funny. So a couple of uh months ago, my oldest son, he was applying to high schools, and those silly questions that ask, like, if you could be any animal, what would you be?
Hmm.
And I was like, I'm a salmon. I'm always swimming upstream. Like, I've realized that that's like
Going
my
through
spirit animal.
bears.
I'm a salmon. Yeah. And it so in the early days, like, getting it going was tough, and there were a lot of skeptics. I think I did a good job of selling the vision to our senior. I sold two important things to our senior leadership. First, I said, and I stand by this, even if the blockchain business isn't successful, if we do some cool stuff, it will improve EY's brand image and will actually be cheaper than a big ad campaign.
Yep. Makes sense.
Secondly, um, I convinced EY that we really need to have some serious math skills. I wanted to work on privacy because I believed in public blockchains and I knew that private blockchains would work and you had to have privacy on public blockchains. But to figure that out, we had to have true researchers. And the message I delivered inside of EY is, we're about to sign off on a bunch of audits. And many people don't realize this about the audit business. There's no such thing in the audit business as limited liability. Liability in audits for incompetence or failure is unlimited. And we're a partnership. That means every last nickel.
Yeah.
So I said, are you sure that you want to be signing off on financial statement audits for companies that use a technology that's based on math and cryptography in a firm which does not have a single mathematician or cryptographer?
It doesn't add
And
up.
they're like, whoa. They're like, whoa, that sounds risky. I think we need to go and get some mathematicians. And so we did. And like, effectively, we had the Nightfall, the privacy research team constituted, and we got going. And, we've been sort of stepping our way up a little bit at a time every year for the last few years.
That's amazing. You're finally seeing your vision come to fruition. And I wanted to know, like, as a child, were you always this visionary? Would you always have like, I wanted to change the electronic world, or you kind of just like, what was your I guess like idea of growing up to adulthood? Like,
I was always very, I was always very opinionated.
hmm.
Uh, I was always like really opinionated, sort of hyperactive and curious. And I wouldn't say I was a visionary. Like, one of the things that has been great about getting older and getting more confident, and one of the things that really, like, I was a very insecure kid, and um, but coming out of the closet is hard work. Like, you have to come out all the time,
I can't
right?
imagine.
Over and
Yeah.
over and over again. And so you lose a lot of your fear when you go through all this process. You lose your fear. When I was unemployed, when my startup failed, like, and I realized, like, the world hasn't ended. I'm married to somebody who brings home the bacon, and uh, I realized, like, wow, there's things I want to do. I don't need the money. I care about the outcome, and that also means that I can go and work someplace, and I don't have to do anything I don't want to, because the worst thing they can do is fire me, and that's really not that bad. And I have to tell you, it probably has made me insufferable as a person to work with, but I'm just super clear about what we're going to go do, and what matters to me. And it's not the quick hit. It's like the transform the entire business world plan.
Why didn't you just work for Ethereum directly
So
or with?
a
'Cause-
couple of things,
mhm.
right? Partly part of it is like, uh, deep down in my own heart of hearts, even though I sort of really know that I'm probably going to be fine, I do sometimes still worry about money and I want to get paid.
Naturally,
Uh,
same.
Secondly, I think one of the things I came to the conclusion early on is that when you work in one of the world's largest accounting firms
Hmm.
and somebody says, "Hey, is this blockchain thing okay?" and you say yes, that has weight. It has way more weight than
It
any.
does.
I've been at startups, I've been at IBM, right? When a startup says this will work, you really don't know because the startup doesn't know. I've worked at we have no idea. Most startups, like we are when you work at a startup, you are selling a product, you have no idea if it's gonna work,
You don't.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
When IBM says we understand this technology, it might be true, it might not be true, but the brand name says we're a technology company. When EY says you're probably not going to prison for using crypto, right? That's powerful. It clears the way. People are like, our accounting firm signed off on this, right? If the
Yeah.
accounting firm that does our audit says it's okay, then it's okay, and we should stop worrying about it. And so, what I came to realize pretty quickly is this is a really powerful platform to get enterprises. So, individuals and startups, they are extremely risk tolerant. They go do cool stuff all the time. Big companies, the ones that invest hundreds of billions of dollars in big infrastructure, they're risk averse. They need somebody to come and say, this is going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
That's amazing because I think you prove a great point is that there's so many different angles to look at cryptocurrency and blockchain as a whole. And you have to attack it from every angle and you have to give as much support from every angle too. It can't just be the Ethereum ecosystem saying it's going to be okay, don't worry, we're going to work it out. But if we have, there's also the Ethereum Alliance where they have all these big name companies saying, yeah, we're backing up Ethereum. It's gonna work. It does
And
give.
and
Mhm.
this is the, you sort of really touched on something which for me is in my mind is one of the best parts about the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm not the only person here who has this kind of mission focus, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you see it in Vitalik, right? He is a remarkably, like, at heart, quite a modest guy, right? There's a story I think I was rereading somewhere about how, like, when the Ethereum Foundation was set up, he like said he didn't care what his title was. Like he could have accrued for himself a lot of power. But what's really impressive about the Ethereum ecosystem is he didn't take the power for himself, even though he had a lot of moral authority. He made the choice to create an institution. And today, Ethereum is governed by a bunch of really boring committees full of really boring people. And I say that with like love in my heart. Like, these people are amazing. They are interested in making stuff work. They're interested in doing it properly. Look at the testing for the merge. And testing for the merge is incredible. Like, they built a couple of test nets and merged them together. They found like one error, right? And they're going to go and do it all over again, right? And that kind of tedious attention to detail, which I can appreciate because I work at an accounting firm,
Yeah.
that is what you want in what is going to become the global economic and financial infrastructure.
No shortcuts.
Vitalik's a modest guy. This place is populated. It's out coming at the eyeballs with people who are mission driven, generous. Uh, there are so many accidental gazillionaires in the Ethereum ecosystem. Like, these are not people who care about the money. They don't even really know what to do with it, right? And I talk to entrepreneurs. The guy Patricio Wertheimer, who's the head of POAP, the Proof of Attendance
Hmm.
Protocol, like he's he. If you were a typical Silicon Valley guy, he'd be talking about scaling his business. When I chat with him, he's focused on, yes, I want to scale Pope, but I don't want to just be a Web3 version of like Swarm, right? I want to preserve the ultimate Web3 nature of what we do, the genuinely decentralized component. Like, there's a level of mission centric, like, change the world vision that you're in in this incredible company, right? Where I feel, in the best way possible, inadequate, not particularly accomplished, you know, professionally jealous of the skills and talents of other people. And if I feel like that, that must mean, you know, that if I'm constantly looking up to other people and being impressed with them, like that's good for me.
Yeah.
That's that I know from my own life, like I rise to the occasion. I it makes me want to do even better.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
this is a it's an extraordinary community, and it's really good to be a part of that, and it's so different from a lot of other sort of industry communities.
And you're surrounding yourself with people that you want to work with. Like, that's they're saying like you're most like the 5 people you surround yourself with every day. And yeah, the more you can surround yourself with that, the more you're likely to grow into that type of role or leadership. So that's a beautiful example. And yeah, the POAP team is awesome. So I'm glad I got to meet them in East Denver. Now that you're in this crypto,
Actually, I
Mhm.
spent time with Patricio in Argentina over
uh,
Christmas because we went there over
that's
Christmas.
so
So
cool.
he's met I've met his girlfriend. He's met my husband. He's met my kids. It's fun to meet all those people.
That's so awesome. And that's why I love crypto. It's global. There's no uh, red tape between people. Um, so now that you're in this crypto space for so long, it's a 24/7 industry, surrounds your mind, your life. It's hard to get away from it. There's no like off switch. But what do you do on your off time? What do you do to like kind of maybe decompress from crypto, or do you just nothing else matters?
No, no, no. I definitely decompress in crypto, and in some respects, like okay, I'm a very okay, like a lot of like nerdy insecure kids from high school, I spend way too much
hmm
time at the gym. I'm definitely making up for like past insecurities. So I go to the gym. Uh my husband got me into bicycling, which I've really come to love, and I do like a couple bicycle trips every year.
Nice.
I've got 2 kids now, which is a pretty substantial
Yeah,
responsibility.
I bet. I'm not there yet.
Um 2 kids and a dog. So that part is great. And in fact, one of the things that is really awesome is being able to do kind of more grown up things with your kids. Like
hmm
my youngest son now is he started running on the track team, and we go running together for like nice long runs, and that is just awesome. I mean, it's great, and I really admire and respect people who can get down on the floor and play with Legos with their kids. But I didn't love that as much. But when the kids and I can do the same thing and we're all liking it, that's kind of amazing. So I feel like I have a very full life. I'm ridiculously fortunate. Um, but the physical activity is really I feel like is super important for my health, for my mental health,
Yep.
right? Kind of clearing my head. Yeah, there's that, and um, yeah, I would say
That's
that that's probably the main thing. Kids, family, uh, a little bit of exercise, and a
yeah.
lot of like blockchain and crypto.
Are your kids into it too? Or do you kind of try to
Um,
not rub it off on them? Like not yet. Just continue enjoying
no,
being a
no, no.
kid.
I think so they're kind of absorbing it by osmosis, so
Yeah.
they sort of know a lot about it, and they watch like sometimes they'll watch like the keynote addresses and things like that, and they go hang out with the people. But they're kids, right? They'd rather play Fortnite.
Yeah.
Uh,
That makes sense. Oh man. So being again in the crypto space, what is your crypto pet peeve?
so I mean, I have a couple of things that really burn me up. So private blockchains,
Yeah.
like
What's
to believe that private blockchains are real is to switch off your critical thinking faculties. What is the point of a decentralized, centrally run ledger? Like,
Yep.
why? To me, it's I don't know what it is, but I have never been able to wrap my head around it, and I'm incredibly stubborn on this topic. Like, so there's that. Um, I have 2 or 3. Like, so the whole private blockchain thing drives me bananas, right? And I'm so tired of litigating it with like a million people. Um, this idea that we're going to have like a multi-chain future, I don't get it either. And the thing is, like, okay, I'm a big believer. If there's an expression that I really love, it's like those who don't learn history are condemned to repeat it.
hmm
I love studying the history of technology, It's just incredible. And what's amazing is over and over and over again, like this history repeats itself in the sense that technology industries love standardization. We don't have 25 different internets. We have TCP,
Yeah.
IP
Yep.
on Ethernet, right? Windows is 90% of the PC business. Android is 90% of mobile phones. Industries consolidate around broadly held standards, right? IBM has 100% of the mainframe business, right? So somebody needs to explain to me if that's how history has worked out on nearly every single technology platform. Now tell me why you think we're going to have like 20 different blockchain kinds.
I still think we might, only because we're humans. Humans have such a need to build their own version better until it just becomes too much to like you can't like build any more on
So,
top
but
of it.
that's
Like there's always gonna be Bitcoin,
so
there's
I
always gonna
there's a
be Ethereum, maybe Solana or Cardano, whatever. I don't think so, but
you should by the way, you should interview this guy. He's super brilliant. He's called Horace. His name is Horace DeGio. He runs a website called asymco.com, asymco.com. And he's a bit of a tech analyst slash historian,
mm-hmm.
and he spends a lot of time thinking about stuff like this, about technology adoption and things like that. And what you just described is what engineers want to do. Engineers look at Ethereum and they think I can do better. It's always like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody looks. It doesn't matter what you make. You
I'm an
look at
engineer,
it.
by
If
the
you're an
way.
engineer, pardon,
I'm an engineer,
you're
by the
not
way.
an.
I am.
You are an engineer. Yeah, my mother was an engineer. This is what engineers do. They look at something and they're like, I can do better. Right. And the number one thing that engineers want to do on any project is start with a clean sheet of paper. They don't want to start with something else. If it was up to most engineers, they'd start with like, a bare sheet of paper and a pen, and they would design the chip. Right. I mean, and they would go up from there. That is how engineers work. They love starting with a clean sheet of paper, but it's not something that everybody is afflicted by. Like a lot of business people, they look at Ethereum and they say that'll do, right? And try to remember. And this is the fun thing. And I'm really old, so I can talk about this. But go back to the 1980s, right? Probably before you were born. Um, Windows PCs were terrible. I mean, mind-bogglingly awful, right?
Yeah.
It was absolutely appalling. And Microsoft had this bizarre limitation that you couldn't have more than 640 kilobytes of RAM. That was it. And
Back then, but yeah.
uh and so it was a terrible experience. And there were all these better platforms out there, like the Mac, Commodore Amiga, Atari ST, Next. And here's this like really clunky PC, um, but it's cheap, it's widely available. Microsoft eventually came up with a workaround, and the first thing that like people said that the workaround to let you have more than 640 kilobytes of memory was that this is like the most inelegant, kludgy hack that they've ever seen. And that's how standards work. Like when you sit down to write a business application that's intended to be used on like corporate desktops, you don't think to yourself, what's the best PC operating system? You
Yeah.
just think, I'm going to make it for Windows because that's what people have. And that's how these ecosystems get born. And I have a joke that I tell, which no one seems to find funny,
Let's see if
but
I do.
uh, I always say like, okay, the best technology wins. And because of that, we know, for example, that once upon a time, somebody invented a better transportation technology than the wheel. We don't know what it is. We'll never know what it is. But the only thing we know for sure is that there must be something better because today we use the wheel.
According to that, yeah, I guess so. We'll never know.
Right.
Damn.
But it's true for everything that we use, right? Uh, Windows is not the best PC operating system. Android and iOS are not the best possible mobile operating systems, but they have this combination of enough
Yeah.
users and enough developers and enough critical mass, and the result is that they win. And I see the same thing happening with Ethereum, right? And I'm not criticizing Ethereum. I think the Ethereum ecosystem is full of really high-minded people who are doing an amazing job. But any system that gets large and complicated and has legacy is going to have some mess attached to it,
Yeah.
right? And as a result, people are going to come, they're going to look at that and be like, I can do better. But in doing so, what's happening is a lot of people are confusing efficiency with effectiveness,
Mm,
right? So engineers look at this and say, I can do better, I can make it more efficient, I can cut transaction processing costs, I can improve cycle time, right? Business people and users look at this and say, that's the big marketplace.
that's where we're going.
That's where the money is. That's where the customers are. So that's where I'm going. And that's why I believe Ethereum will win. By the way,
It's a good
in the
point.
same way that Windows that we use today, and there's a couple related sort of lessons from history. One is, yes, Windows and MS DOS of 1984, 1985, 1989, etc., was terrible. And it was way worse than the competition. But it didn't stay completely awful, right? They keep improving it, and this is how technology works. Somebody else comes up with a cool idea, they come up with a clever way of implementing something. It gradually gets absorbed into that thing. Maybe not as fast as we would like,
Hmm.
but it gets absorbed in there. The product gets better and better and better over time, right? I mean, anybody who used Windows today, who was like sort of transported here in a time warp, be like, "Wow, this is incredible! This is amazing! Can't believe how good it got!" Right? Because and if you're an engineer, you might look under the hood at Windows or iOS or anything and be like, oh my God, iOS,
Yeah.
Android, it's built on Unix. My mother worked on Unix in the 1960s.
It's
I
still alive.
mean, it's still alive, right? I cannot believe that in 50 years we couldn't come up with something really fundamentally better, right? I'm sure we could. So these things get better, right? Ethereum will keep getting better. It will be perfect.
Hmm.
It'll have legacy debt, but it'll also have the size in the marketplace. And that same process will continue. And by the way, the other weird thing that people don't realize is, Windows and MS DOS won the day in like the mid 1980s. No one's been able to knock them off that top
Yeah.
slot. Ethereum has won the day, and I will bet you money that in 2050, it's still the main blockchain ecosystem.
Okay, let me just write that down. I hope so. I mean, yeah, I'm rooting for Ethereum. I love their community, love their ecosystem. I think, like you said, they're robust testing. They, they really care about their blockchain rather than look at us pump our price. It's like the last community to really care about the value of their token, which is what I care
Yeah.
about. What I care about, like the technology, not the value. um,
Right, and the transformation it will cause, and
yeah.
that's why I'm very sympathetic to the comments that Vitalik made the other day about NFTs. I don't think he was dumping on NFTs,
No. Yeah.
but I share a little bit of this philosophy as well. Like fundamentally, I'm a bit of an idealist, and I don't want blockchains to be used to create more scarcity. We have enough scarcity, right? Um, I want to see I believe we're headed towards an era of abundance. Right. I'm a big believer in like that our future is one of tremendous abundance and wealth and a much more equitable system. Like people talk about how there's privilege, right? I
Yeah.
love all the discussion about privilege that we all have. The one thing I always hate about that discussion is I don't want I don't want to I want people to make the world a more equal place by leveling everybody down. That we make the world a more equal place by kind of giving everybody more privilege, right?
Yeah.
And we should give everybody more stuff and more wealth and more opportunity and all of those things. And we'll never get around the fact that some part of our economy, some part of our world is scarce. And what I want to see blockchain do is make the best, fairest, most efficient allocation of that which is scarce, but I have to admit, like a lot of the stuff that you see going on in crypto is about creating artificial scarcity. And that doesn't excite the idealist in me. It feels like a status game
Yeah.
or something else. And what I really want to see is like more for everybody.
Yeah, and I totally feel that, understand. And part of me is like, yeah, and another part of me is kind of thankful for NFTs only because look how much attention it brought to Ethereum. Mainstream media, celebrities, people just Ethereum, like it's becoming more widely understood. I mean, now people are like, oh, what is an NFT? So they start diving in. So hopefully their idealism starts kicking in when they start really researching what Ethereum is. That's the hope.
Right. And I'm with you. Like they've done the concept is great. Execution is really amazing. It's come a long way. But some of the more aggressive efforts to just make money to sort
Yeah,
of monetize stuff, like again, I feel like some like old fart, I feel about it. I don't want to stop it. Like I want to be clear, like
yep,
it's a I don't want to stop NFTs, but I have a hard time really caring about a piece of digitally generated art that was probably primarily created for the purpose of generating some quick sale. I love the idea of artists getting paid more. I feel like
exactly.
some I just
People are
generally think like
gamifying
there's
it.
a right. There's some of this is it's just like the ICO boom, right? There's
Yeah,
pump and dump, and there's people here. There's people who are here to make a quick buck. In fact, a lot of times I talk to people about the culture of it of the blockchain ecosystem. And in this culture of the blockchain ecosystem, you have these people who are sort of somewhat uneasy, contributors together, right? You've got your like quick money folks, right? They're there to pump a token and get out of there,
yeah,
right? You've got your Ethereum idealists. They're there to build. They're not ungrateful though, because the token pumpers are helping make them quite wealthy, but that's not their end goal, right? So it's a sometimes it's an uneasy coexistence, right? And I don't think we'd be as successful without some of the more hardcore capitalists, because that's how our society runs.
hmm
Um, I just have a hard time getting enthusiastic about some of the really extreme examples of that.
yeah, and
And
that
if I have another pet peeve about the
yeah,
not Ethereum specifically, but more broadly the blockchain ecosystem.
hmm
It's the hate that can be directed at anyone who criticizes Bitcoin or dumps on NFTs or really, um, you know, criticism. Thoughtful criticism is really useful, and uh, there are people in this community who do not react well to that.
yeah. It is tough. It's a lot of my blockchain is better than your blockchains. Like, all right, let's just maybe work together. That's an idea, but that's tough for them to do. So then I also wanted to ask you, um, being in the ecosystem, being in the blockchain space, a lot of young people are trying to enter in and develop their career, their life. You know, what advice do you have for them, like getting into something they're, this new space?
So uh, I think I'm not going to tell people like follow your passion
Yeah.
because it's good. But the thing you always have to remember is like you've got to roll up your sleeves and you've got to be able to like add value. And a lot of times, like when and people call me all the time inside of EY or other, they email me and stuff, and they're like, Paul, how could I get into this? Or I'm currently an accountant or an
hmm
auditor or a consultant. How do I get into this? And I sort of, typically there's two paths. I think path number one, know something in great depth. Be really good at something that's not related to blockchain, but can be transformed by blockchain.
Mm,
If you understand banking, you are really valuable because banking will be transformed by blockchain. And if you can be incredibly expert at banking and pretty good at blockchain, you're valuable to us,
yep.
right? Uh, it also works the other way around. If you are an incredible developer, but you can also take some time to learn about an industry. So you're really deep in one area and you know a little bit about another. Again, you're really valuable to us. But the foundation of getting into anything is being really good at something that's important for it, right? And being really good means uh, putting in the hours and the time to go through the details and become expert in some aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
I spent many, many years in the world of supply chain. Um, I know all about lots of ridiculously obscure things about supply chain. I know about EDI messaging. And it's really funny, we keep reinventing stuff. EDI, and do you know what EDI
I
is?
don't.
Ah,
Is
this is so amazing. So EDI stands for electronic data interchange. And it's the way I explain it is this is like business to business text messaging.
uh,
And it started in the 1970s. And a bunch of committees in the 1970s sat down and worked out what do businesses need to say to each other electronically, right? And it
mhm,
boils down to I want something. Would you please send it to me? Tell me how much it's going to cost. Tell me how much you have. Tell me if you shipped it. Send me the bill for it. I've received it. Um, I've sent you payment, etc. Like there's a bunch of these standard messages. Like EDI 856 message is a advanced shipment notice. It basically says you asked for these items. I'm sending them to you. This is the tracking number of this carrier. Well, if you're trying to build a business to business blockchain application and you're some industry analyst or some EY kind of software developer, and you're sitting down saying, gosh, what should be in one of these messages? I'm like, dude, already done, right? Was literally done 40 years ago. Go look at these things. It will tell you like really smart people spend a lot of time sitting down thinking about what should be in this. And so learning all that stuff, like being really expert at it, all the obscure, ridiculous supply
yeah,
chain stuff I know is really useful. And so that's the thing that I would tell people is like go learn something in detail and learn it at such a level that you can tell people who know nothing about it something really interesting and fascinating, like the fact that businesses have been basically text messaging each other for 40 years.
yeah. Wow, I didn't even know that. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, it's an amazing business. In the early days, they used to charge per character.
Wow, I mean, I wasn't living in a time where it was per text message or per call, whatever, but I didn't know it was per character. Wow.
Per character. I mean, I found out about this. It's like, oh my god, that's an amazing per character, right? No wonder everyone was so efficient with what they had to say.
uh, so for one of my final questions, I'd like to know what is your favorite wholesome crypto moment? Some moment that warmed your heart in crypto or made you smile.
Um, the wholesome crypto moments, and I can't think of any one particular one, but the
Hmm.
ones that I love are these stories where the crypto community just decides that some injustice needs to be righted, somebody needs to be helped out, and like all of a sudden they're sitting on a pile of crypto, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I should be more specific. I think one of the things I've especially loved is the way the crypto community has come together to decide that we need to do better when it comes to open source software, right?
Yeah.
And we need in terms of like the public service component, right? These Gitcoin grants, this process of funding public goods, this idea. It's not just like, hey, we're going to donate a bit of money. It's much more like, and I love the ambition. This is what's amazing. Like people in the crypto community don't just say, oh, we should give a little money to those poor people who are maintaining that enterprise software or that piece of free software. They say we should transform how public goods are created and make it better, fair, and more rewarding.
Yeah.
That's that's not like plugging a leak. That's kind of rebuilding the whole dam and transforming the business. And I love this amazing combination of the kind of ambition you usually only see in big time entrepreneurs with an interest in public service. Like when you see those things come together, that is something that I think like my legacy, right? When they write my obituary, which hopefully will not be for a
Yeah.
while,
Hopefully not.
they will say, I will be able to say, or I will know that I made a small but non-zero contribution to truly making some of these things happen.
That's amazing. And yeah, just by yeah, it's a thing. Just contribute and add value to the ecosystem. Yeah.
So
Thank you so much, Paul, for joining me here today. I really appreciate it. I I'm excited to see what you're developing and doing. I'm gonna watch you like rise to the top again. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate it.
thank you. This was a lot of fun.
So good night, everybody.